So, arresting consenting adults for wanting to have sex in exchange for money or something of value or whatever never made any sense to me. It's always felt like an extreme invasion of my privacy, and something about it seems like it should be what was the word? See, I can't pause my video. I can't stop my video, so I just have to keep going with it. I'm doing these on laptop. But every time I've ever been arrested, which has been maybe just a handful of times, I know just isn't 4 or 5 times isn't just, but I haven't been arrested for like over 10 years because I screen people like really, really well. But when I first started doing sex work, I had no one to tell me how to screen people. I actually started working back before the internet, believe it or not. And I don't know how people screened back then. I think what they used to do is they'd get their business phone number and ask them when it was a good time to call them on that business line. But I mean, anyone could set up a fake phony business unless it's in the yellow pages. I wouldn't trust that way of doing it. But I mean, yeah, if someone gives you their business number and you can look it up in the yellow pages, but now people use the internet and you have to be careful because a lot of businesses can be fake. But not to get off topic. You just want to make sure everything's legit, the person's legit, that you can look them up online on search engines and see that they are real people with real, addresses and stuff like that. Because anything can be made up, but you can only fake something so much. Um, but before all that, way back when I first started working, I used to get arrested like I was averaging about every 3 years, I'd say 3 or 4 years. Not good, but I guess it's not horrible. I mean, I've heard of people being arrested constantly, like especially street people that work, street based. They probably get arrested all the time. But anyway, it's all really very traumatizing. I never felt like ashamed, like not even when I was arrested at this apartment complex where, I actually lost my apartment. The cops ran and told the management, they had as soon as they had me in handcuffs, they ran and told, and I never felt like embarrassed or ashamed or anything. They took me off to jail, and then I had to have my grandmother bail me out like the next day, my 80-year-old grandmother, because I didn't have anybody else to bail me out. And I lost my apartment. I was told that I had to leave as soon as possible. I was barely given any time. So basically, I was like homeless because basically I had to get out like ASP, and I had to have a client help me and everything. It was a very traumatic experience, but I never felt ashamed or embarrassed about any of it. I just felt like my rights were extremely violated. I felt extremely violated. And I felt like I had no privacy rights. And basically, that's it. Sex workers don't have any privacy rights. And I know a lot of people might think, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, like, what do you have to hide? And then we have all these debates about, well, should the government be spying on all of us? Should we have some kind of privacy? And then on the other hand, you have people saying, well, if you're not doing anything wrong. But what I like to say is, as an adult, consenting adult, how is it I'm doing anything wrong? And how is it that my privacy, what I do in private in my own bedroom, how can that be the government's business? It makes no sense to me. It never has made any sense to me. And I see a pattern here. And that has to do with the Ninth Circuit, how they slapped our case down and said we have no privacy rights, that we should not be allowed or decriminalized. And I see a pattern here. And because that makes absolutely no sense to tell us as adults that we have no privacy rights, that we should not be allowed, decriminalized to do sex work, and they had no good answer. They had no good reason. Why is it legal to give something away that's illegal to sell? Like, okay, I can have sex here in my house all day long with as many guys as I want, as long as I'm not charging a dime, a penny, or whatever, or even like food. I mean, I can't even say, oh, I'll have sex with you for, a dinner. I mean, even though women do that all the time, it's like, okay, you can like go and have dinner with someone and have sex with them. That's fine. That's legal. But as soon as you say, you want to consent to something like that, it's all of a sudden illegal because it's considered compensation. You see where I'm going with this? It's really quite, oh, what's the word? It's so mental. It's so mental. It's not even rational. And I see the pattern here because when I think about the Ninth Circuit slapping us down and not having any good reason and how it made no sense, I also see that as the same thing. When they arrest sex workers, there's no good reason. It makes no sense. I would say that the last time I got arrested, there was really no reason for them to arrest me. I never even talked about anything, okay? Nothing. The only thing I said on the phone was how much for the hour. When I got to his hotel, and that was a while ago, and I wasn't screening people back then, and he never asked me what we were going to do on the phone. It was just for my time. And I get there, and then he starts to ask me what we're going to do, and I kind of get nervous because I'm thinking this isn't right. I'm thinking you can't, I'm thinking to myself, this guy must be a cop. I started thinking that because he kept wanting to know what we were going to do. So I just figured, because I was very naive back then, so I thought, well, as long as I don't say anything, maybe they won't arrest me, and wrong, because I didn't say anything. I just said, well, this is just for my time. I said, can't we just hang out and talk? And that's when he pulled his badge on me, and like 10 cops came busting down, the door practically. And it scared me, and they had guns drawn on me. So yeah, they put me in handcuffs. And the really scary thing about it was I had to wait 4 months before I had my hearing come up. And I did have to pay an attorney a lot of money, actually. And why it's scary is because, think about it, if they would have actually hauled me off to jail, I would have been sitting in jail for 4 months. And can you imagine? I have no one to help me. I have no one to pay my bills for me. I would have came out of there absolutely homeless with all my stuff on the street. So I was lucky they didn't haul me off to jail. But the really horrible thing about it was, yeah, I was like in limbo for 4 months. I couldn't move. Had to stay there in that town. I was just stuck there in that town for 4 months before I had my hearing. And then I got up at like 2 in the morning, to get to court to show up to my hearing with my attorney. And then my attorney says, oh, they dismissed the case. Okay. It's all about harassment. It's all about making your life horribly miserable and harassing you. That's all it is. And enough is enough. Why doesn't this stop? But I see this cycle of abuse the state does to us. So they harass us that way, they abuse us that way, and then you turn around. Believe me, I'm not putting the sex workers organization down. I'm totally with them, and we do need to fight, and we do need to keep this going in court, because we need to show people how they treat us. If people will listen and look and see what they're doing to us. But at the same time, it's kind of ridiculous, because it's like we're going to our abusers, the state, and and the judges, the same people that convict us all the time, and we're asking them, to please stop, and they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. They're not going to give us that kind of privilege to be able to have our privacy. They're not. They're not going to give it to us, because we're just a very small minority group. We never get angry. Okay. We're not out protesting. We're not always sex workers. Not all of us have been sex workers for our whole lives. A lot of sex workers say anonymous. They don't want people to know who they are, and that's the problem. If we really were serious, we would be like the gay community. We'd always be sex worker. Every sex worker would always be sex worker. They wouldn't care if anyone knew. they would all be out protesting and getting angry. And I would love to go and bash some effing heads in, okay? But sex workers aren't really like that. Most of them just want to be left alone. And they don't want anyone to know what they do. And I don't really give a F, okay? But I mean, yeah, I'm a loner. I don't go out and announce it to everyone because I'm, considered a criminal. But believe me, if I wasn't considered a criminal, I wouldn't care if anyone knew. If they couldn't discriminate on me, why would I care if they knew? They're not going to give me that right. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to have that privilege ever, probably ever in my life. Okay, so that's the depressing part. Okay, now for the good part. Technology. That's it. Technology is the only thing that's going to help sex workers. If you look at the history of really stupid laws, especially laws against sex, what happens? They just get put on a shelf and they collect dust, and nobody can really enforce them. Same thing with sex work. Take care.